Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got another build for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for you. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about the Hedge Trimmer. Now this is a very interesting build. It kind of came out of the concept of wanting to make a character that goes as fast as possible. So let's talk about this a little bit. Have you ever wanted to make a character that's like the Roadrunner, super fast, super hard to catch? Or perhaps you maybe just want to be Usain Bolt and be the fastest person on legs? Well, today I've got the build for you. Not only are we going to make a character that's very fast, we're also going to figure out, I've actually uh, figured out a way to make that speed actually give us the ability to do a lot of damage. So let's jump into it. I'll talk about the build concept, talk about levels level 1, levels 2 through 6, 7 through 9, 10 through 13, and 14 through 17 before summarizing. And I will be doing damage reports at those important thresholds of level 6, level 9, level 13, and level 17 as normal. And for this build in particular, I'm going to be presenting two versions of this build. The only difference is going to be a racial choice. One of them is going to be more geared toward burst damage, and the other is going to be more geared towards sustained damage. So, what is the main feature of this build? This build is very, very fast. The main concept of this build, again, was to make a character that is as fast as possible, and while still being able to pump out some good damage by making use of that speed. Now, yeah, we're not going to be using our concentration to make ourselves faster, but you're going to be using it to help us deal damage, and I'll get more into that. This character is also going to be a very good grappler. The core of our strategy is going to involve grabbing an enemy and using our high movement speed to move them around. And we're going to be able to do this with a very interesting means. This is going to be a character that dumps strength, but is still going to be a good grappler. We're going to have some amount of spell casting on this character, mainly utility, but there's a certain spell that we're going to use that will help us convert our movement speed into damage. The books that you will need to build this character, you'll need the Player's Handbook, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and I'm going to be using both the race options I'm going to present today are from Monsters of the Multiverse. You can use it a different race, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but the two main ones are from there. So, at level 1, we are starting as a monk. Yes, this is the first time I've featured monk on the channel, and this build is going to be primarily monk, and why will become pretty clear very soon. So as a monk at level 1, we don't get any proficiency in armor. We get proficiency with simple weapons and short swords. We get proficiency in a tool or a musical instrument. We also get strength and dexterity saves. And of the skills that we get at level 1, it's important that we pick up athletics proficiency. As for the kind of background of this character, I envision that you are probably from some kind of monastery in the wilds, and you've always been the fastest kid in the class. You enjoy running and running and running and running, but you also have an eye and a mind for nature and the natural things, and you might like a little punching and kicking on the side too. Now, as for our race, the two options that I'm going to focus on today are the Tabaxi for the burst damage version and the Centaur for the DPR version. Now, both these are from Tasha's, and why are these important? So the Tabaxi has a 30-foot base move speed, but importantly, they have the feline agility feature. So what this does is on your turn, you can double your move speed, but you can't do it again until you don't move on a turn. So there's basically no downside to using this. You'll just have to like stop after combat if you want to use it again for the next combat. But by doubling our speed, that will enable us to put out a huge amount of burst damage. And the Centaur, the main thing about the Centaur that we want here is they have a 40-foot base movement speed. It's the highest among all races, pretty much. Importantly, also these races both also have a special kind of unarmed strike that does a d6 of damage. The Centaur also has some bonus things like for when it charges, you can make a bonus attack like with your hooves and that kind of thing. These are nice, but we're not going to be really using any of these features in this build besides the move speed. And the way that this build is going to primarily deal damage is going to be through our move speed. Now, As for our stats, we're doing point buy as always. I'm getting a 15 dex with a +1 there, a 15 con, and then a 15 wisdom with a +2 there. You can drop your constitution to 14. I'm not going to be increasing this potentially until after the build is complete at level 17. So if you want to have a 14 constitution and better stats elsewhere, you're more than welcome to do that. That could bump one of your 8s up to a 10. Now, at level 1, monks get unarmored defense, which means while not wearing any armor, our armor class is equal to our 10 plus our dex plus our wisdom, which means it would be 16. We also get the martial arts feature. This lets us make unarmed attacks or attacks with our monk weapons with our dexterity instead of strength if we want to. And we can use a d4 in place of their dice if we want to. And we can also make one unarmed strike as a bonus action if we made an attack with a monk weapon or an unarmed strike on our turn. And these benefits don't function if you're wearing any armor or like using weapon in 2 hands or anything like that. Well, actually, I think it can work if you have a 2-hand versatile monk weapon like a staff. But interestingly enough here, because both of these races have a d6 unarmed weapon, we'll be able to use it with dex because of this feature, but we won't have to use that 1d4 dice. We can just use the d6 dice from our race, which is nice. Now, as for our starting equipment, you are going to, monks don't really get any armor, get a staff, or something that you can use as a druidic focus, maybe with some of your starting gold or the stuff from your background. For the most part, this character is going to be running around with nothing but the clothes that they're wearing, essentially. And we are going to be grabbing people and dragging them along with us at that high speed and like casting 1 or 2 spells. So you don't need much, if any, equipment on this character. And also at level 1, our health is 8 plus our con mod, so that'll be 10. All right, at level 2, we are taking another level in Monk. At Monk 2, we get our key points. So these are our short rest resource we can use to fuel our abilities. And the basic abilities that we get are Flurry of Blows, which we can use a bonus action to make 2 unarmed strikes and spend a key point, assuming that we made an unarmed strike or attack with a monk weapon as part of our action earlier on the turn. We get Patient Defense, which lets us use a key point to take the dodge action as a bonus action. And then we get Step of the Wind, which lets us take the dash action as a bonus action. And this is what we're going to be using most of our key points for. The dash action basically gives you your speed again. So this essentially doubles how far we can move on a turn. At level 2, monks also get the unarmored movement feature, which gives them an extra 10 feet of move speed. So importantly, our base speed as a tabaxi would now be 40 feet, and our base speed as a centaur would now be 50 feet. We also get the dedicated weapon feature out of Tasha's. This lets us choose a weapon that we're proficient with and bond with it and make it a monk weapon. Mainly this is useful if you have some kind of racial weapon proficiency, and we don't, so we don't really care about this. But at Monk 3, we now have 3 key points as equal to our level. We get the Deflect Missiles feature, so this lets us use our reaction to reduce damage of a projectile that hits us by 1d10 plus our dex modifier plus our monk level. And at this level, that would reduce most incoming damage to 0. We also get our monastic tradition here, and we are getting Way of the Astral Self. So perhaps your monk school has kind of taught this way about growing and building a greater consciousness. But the important thing here is we get the Arms of the Astral Self feature at this level. Now, we can spend a key point to activate our Arms of the Astral Self with a bonus action. When we do, all enemies within, I think, 10 feet of us have to make a dex save against our key save DC, which is 8 plus our proficiency plus our wisdom. And if they fail, they take a damage equal to 2 rolls of our martial arts dice. So that would be 2d4 at this level. And the arms are active for 10 minutes. While they're active, we get some really nice benefits. We can use our wisdom modifier instead of our strength modifier for strength checks and strength saves. Now, importantly, this does not make them wisdom saves. They are still strength saves, but you can use your wisdom modifier. And they're still strength checks. Importantly, this means that we can use our wisdom modifier for our athletics checks. So we would now have +6 to athletics, +5, 3 plus our proficiency, and +5 to our strength saves while the arms are active. We can also make unarmed strikes with our arms. They deal force damage instead of normal damage, and they have a 5-foot longer reach. This means that we can bypass magical immunity already as long as we make the attacks with our astral arms. And yeah, they can use our wisdom modifier for our attack and damage rolls with these unarmed strikes with the monk arms. We also get the key field attack feature here. This says that if we use a monk, spend a key point as part of our action on our turn, we can use a bonus action to make an attack with an unarmed strike or a monk weapon, and this subclass doesn't really get much use out of that, but it's a nice bonus thing from Tasha's. But at level 4, we are taking a departure from monk for a little bit. We need to kind of get our natural training up and going. So are taking a dip into Druid. Now at Druid 1, we get proficiency with medium armor and shields for being a Druid, but we're not going to use them. We also get the Druidic feature, which lets us it's like the Druid secret language. You can leave messages and that kind of thing. It's a nice ribbon feature. And then we get the Druid spell casting, which is based off wisdom. They are a prepared caster, so you know all the spells on your list, and you can prepare a number of them equal to your wisdom modifier plus your Druid level. So at this level for us, that would be 4. We get to learn 2 cantrips, and I would learn the Shillelagh and Thornwhip cantrips here. Importantly, you could use Shillelagh on your quarterstaff at this level, and this would let you attack with a D8 with wisdom with it. So you can now be all in on wisdom with your astral arms and your staff, assuming that you're still making weapon attacks with your staff, which you probably will be at this level. I'd also take Thornwhip. It's a nice ranged ability to pull enemies closer to us. We have 2 spell slots at first level, and I would prepare of the 4 spells that we can pick, the big one that we always want to have prepared here is Longstrider. This is a spell that doesn't require concentration, and it lasts for an hour, and we can give a creature plus 10 feet of move speed. That's going to be ourselves. When we do our damage calculations, I'm going to assume that we've precast this, and we are always going to have it. The other ones I would prepare at this level are Healing Word for that emergency heal for your allies, Fairy Fire to give your party advantage on attacks against enemies, and Entangle for a little bit of control. At level 2, we get our at level 5 we are a Druid 2. We get our Wild Shape ability, which lets us turn into an animal. This is rather complicated, but basically it replaces your physical stats with those of the beast, and you keep your mental stats, and the beast's health goes on over yours, basically like temporary hit points. And if you lose them, it falls off, and you go back to yourself. We're not going to be using our Wild Shape to turn into a beast on this build in combat. You might use it for utility later. But our Druid circle that we get here, we're going with the Circle of Stars. Now, there are a couple main things we get here. We get the star map feature. So we get a little map. Maybe it's like hangs around our neck or something like that. But this gives us the Guidance cantrip. It also gives us the Guiding Bolt spell. It's always prepared for us and doesn't count against the number of spells we have prepared. And we can cast it for free a number of times per day equal to number of times per long rest equal to our proficiency modifier, which is 3. So this makes you a great ranged blaster at this level, and that's a great thing to have. We also get the Starry Form ability, which lets us use a use of our Wild Shape to do different things, and we're going to be planning on using this. It's going to depend a little bit on a GM ruling. You might not need it, but they are really nice. The Archer Form, all of these things do something when you activate them, and then like they have a passive bonus basically. So the Archer Form, when you shift into this form with your bonus action, you can make a ranged spell attack that does 1d8 plus 3 force damage, plus your wisdom modifier at this level is 3. And on subsequent turns while it's active, you can repeat that attack as a bonus action. The Chalice Form improves your healing, which is okay. You're not really going to be using this one. And then the Dragon Form lets you treat when you make a wisdom check or a concentration save, you can treat any roll on the dice that's lower than 10 as a 10. That's your base d20 roll. Now, importantly here, when you're under the arms of the astral self, those strength checks are still strength checks, even though they're using your wisdom modifier. So this doesn't actually work, rules as written. Talk to your DM about this if they'll let you use Dragon Form with those strength checks that you've shifted to wisdom. But rules as written, it doesn't work, and I will not be assuming it does. But but talk to your DM and see if they allow it. But at level 6, we are going to be a 3rd level Druid. This means that we get 2nd level spells and spell slots. And there's one main big one here that we want, and that is the Spike Growth spell. And I will talk more about what this does in the damage report here in a little bit, but this is going to be the key to converting our movement speed into damage. There's some other important ones to highlight here, like Enlarge Reduce, which will help us later on to be able to grapple larger creatures. Importantly, it is concentration, so if you grapple them well, under the effect of this spell, you won't be able to use the Spike Growth for damage, which is kind of unfortunate. But there's so many good level 2 Druid spells like these and Pass Without Trace. Prepare what you need. But at level 6, it's time for our first damage report. What I do with these, I calculate our damage against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and plus 0 to their saves, and then a higher armor class and a bonus to their saves. In this case, it's going to be athletics. So what do our tactics look like at this point? So we're going to be pre-buffed with the Long Strider spell for plus 10 damage, and if your GM allows the dragon form to work with your athletics checks, I'm going to assume that you have it active before the fight starts. So in the first round, we're going to run in, use our bonus action to activate our Astral Arms and grapple our target. Then in round 2, we're going to cast Spike Growth on top of them so that they are standing in it and we are not. And then we're going to use our Step of the Wind to dash, and we are going to use our movement. And if we are a Tabaxi, we're going to activate our Feline Agility. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drag our target back and forth on the Spike Growth using all of our move speed. So what does this mean for our total movement? So if you are a Tabaxi, you'll have 50 feet of base move speed at this point, 30 plus 10 from unarmored movement plus 10 from Long Strider. So 50 base plus 50 from dashing is 100 total feet. We're going to double it from Feline Agility to 200, and then we're going to have it because we're dragging our target. So we get to move a total of 100 feet with our target. If we're a Centaur, it's that 40 plus the 20 for the base, so we get 60 plus 60, so 120 total feet there, and we're having it because we're dragging, and so we can drag our target 60 feet. Now, the Spike Growth spell makes the target take 2d4 damage per 5 feet they move in the area, and force movement like dragging does work with this. It is piercing damage. There's a question of whether or not it's magical, and that's another question you'll have to take to your DM. If it's not magical, this build will not be as good, but if it is, a lot of GMs will consider it magical because it's damage from a spell. It'll work against enemies that are, resistant to magical damage. So what does this mean? So for our Tabaxi, moving 100 feet, that means we would get 20 ticks of Spike Growth for 40 d4 for a total of 100 average damage. And for our Centaur, we would get 60 feet divided by 5 is 12, times 2d4 is 24d4 for a total, again, of 60 average damage. So as you can see from this, with Spike Growth, basically what this means is every foot that the target moves, they take 1 damage. So we're going to be able to do a direct translation from move speed into damage. It is 1-to-1 after checking for how far we can actually drag the target. So again, one of the other cool things about this is it does not matter what the enemy's armor class or save bonus is, because if you have them grappled and they don't escape, which I'm assuming that they are, the math is a little complicated to try to figure out whether or not they would be able to escape. And so against an athletic enemy, these damage numbers are going to be potentially a little lower because you might not have them grappled. You might have to wait and might grapple them again. But for the sake of the math and simplicity, I'm going to assume that the target is grappled and doesn't escape. So our burst Tabaxi would do 100 damage on average, and our DPR Centaur would do 60 points of damage. At this point, the DPR of the Tabaxi is 10 points lower than that of the Centaur, so they're at 50. And overall, it'll take the Centaur a long time to catch up in terms of burst damage. Overall, I generally recommend the Tabaxi build, but I want to make sure that both are present. Now, at level 7, we're going to keep going in Monk. We get our first ability score increase or feat here, and we're going to take the Mobile feat. This increases our base movement speed by 10 feet, and movement speed translates directly into damage, so that's really, really something that we want. It also makes it so that if we don't provoke opportunity attacks from creatures if we attack them on our turn. This isn't really that big of a deal because we have reach from the Astral Arms, and we're mainly taking this for the move speed because we want to be as fast as possible, and move speed equals damage. We also get the Quicken Healing feature here, which lets us spend key points to heal. not really a big deal, and we don't care about it that much. Oop, wrong way. But at level 8, we are going to be going into fighter here. Our character is taking a little bit more interest in their punching and kicking, wants to learn a little bit more about it. There's one main reason I'm here, and it's the reason I'm here for a lot of builds, and that is ultimately fighter 2, but also fighter 3 on this character, which I'll talk about more when we get there. But at fighter 1, we get a fighting style. I'm going to take unarmed fighting here. This actually lets us use a D8 for our unarmed attacks if we're not holding anything, and this is better than the D6 we had from our natural unarmed strikes, so this is an improvement. And if our target is grappled at the start of our turn, they just take a D4 of damage. So hooray, 2.5 points of extra damage. Some other ones that could be good here are blind fighting and superior technique, but they're not as good, and I'd recommend unarmed fighting here. We also get second wind here at this level, which lets us heal for 1d10 plus our fighter level, so 1 point as a bonus action once per short rest. Nice, but not like super good. But at level 9, we are a fighter 2, and that gives us action surge, which means that once per short rest, we can take an extra action on our turn. We're going to be using this to dash to do more damage. So this is going to be a big bonus to our damage output. So at level 9, it's time for our next damage report. What has changed since last time? We got the mobile feat for plus 10 feet of move speed. We got unarmed fighting for that D4 at the start of our turn while our target is grappled. Again, also helps our unarmed attacks, but we're not going to be using those for damage because speed is better. And we got action surge to dash for more speed for more damage. So what do our tactics look like now? Again, we pre-buff with Longstrider. We still run in, activate our arms, and grapple our target. And then on round 2, we cast Spike Growth, Step of the Wind Dash, Action Surge Dash, and use our move speed and activate Feline Agility if we are a Tabaxi. And importantly, now that we have this, the DPR version is still going to be doing this, so they have enough key points. Plus, with this, they can essentially use the triple movement every turn for as long as the combat is going to last. So that's going to be really nice. So our total move speed now is 60 foot base plus 120 feet for 2 dashes as a Tabaxi. It's now 180, doubled and then halved. It's still 180. And our friend the Centaur has 70 foot base move speed here, doubled, plus 140 from 2 dashes is 210. Have it from dragging, you get 105 feet. Now, because we know that damage is equal to how far we move the target, and that extra D4 on top, our Tabaxi does 182.5 damage, and our Centaur does 107.5 damage per round. Now, again, it's the same regardless of our enemy's armor class or save bonus. And again, I'm assuming the target is grappled and hasn't escaped. This is a big asterisk. But since last time, we've gained 82.5 damage in our burst version and 47.5 damage in our DPR version. This is a pretty significant increase of 83% and 79%, basically because we've gotten that extra speed and we've gotten that extra dash. And we are doing very well here. And this is probably the peak of our relative power. At level 10, we are going back to Monk. This gives us extra attack and stunning strike. Because we are wisdom focused on this character, that stunning strike is going to be more likely to land. Our martial arts dice also improves to a D6 here, but we have a D8 at this point from the unarmed fighting style, so that doesn't really do anything. And we also get the focused aim feature. This lets us spend key points to add a bonus to our attacks if we miss, but honestly, we're probably not making attacks. We're just grappling, and so this doesn't really do anything. Yeah, basically what we got out of that is the extra attack. This will now let us grapple our target and then shove them prone while grappled, because you can make those both with attacks. So if your target is grappled and prone, they can't stand up because they're restrained from the grapple. So they have to escape the grapple before they can even move, and it's going to be tough for them. So that's what we're going to be planning on doing now. It also gives you another chance to grapple the target if you missed your first grapple. But at level 11, we're going back to Druid for one more level. This gives us an improvement to our wild shape. We can turn into a CR1 half beast that can't fly. Again, that would only be useful outside of combat, and we don't really care. We also get our another ability score increase or feat here, and I'm going to take the skill expert feat from Tasha's. What this does is it gives us +1 to an attribute of our choice, so that's going to be our wisdom. We get proficiency in a skill of our choice, pick whatever you want, and then we get expertise in a skill of our choice that we were proficient in. You're going to pick athletics. So at this point, with a +4 proficiency bonus, we would have a +12 to athletics, which is amazing. If your DM let you use the dragon form with athletics checks, again, not rules as written, but your DM might allow it, you would have a minimum roll of 22 on those grapple checks, which is pretty crazy. You also get another cantrip at this level. Pick whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And we get another second level spell slot. So great. We can potentially spike growth for 3 encounters per long rest now. Fantastic. Or we can just use some of our nice utility spells. At level 12, we are going back to Fighter for our martial archetype, which is going to be Rune Knight. This gives us some bonus proficiencies, and we get the Rune Carver feature. This lets us inscribe a couple of runes onto our gear, probably going on our clothes or our necklace or our star map or that kind of thing. And I'm going to be taking the Cloud Rune and the Stone Rune. You can kind of pick whatever runes you want on this character, but I like these ones both for the passive benefits that give things like dark vision and advantage on certain kinds of checks, as well as they both have really nice defensive active abilities. The Cloud Rune lets you potentially change the target of an attack from like yourself to another creature, or like one of your allies to another one of your enemies, that kind of thing. And the Stone Rune lets you potentially incapacitate an enemy temporarily. So they're both really good, really nice defensive features. We also get the Giant's Might feature here, which importantly lets us become large. So we can now grapple huge creatures while we're under the effect of this. It takes a bonus action to activate and lasts for 1 minute. It also gives us advantage on strength checks and strength saves. So now we will have advantage on our grapple checks guaranteed. This one does work, rules as written, but again, talk to your DM about this. Either Giant's Might or Dragon Form should work. I think it's just, in my opinion, it's just Giant's Might that works rules as written, but again, talk to your GM. It also gives us a 1d6 bonus to one of our attack damages once per turn while we're under the effect of it, lasts for a minute. We're not going to be attacking very much, so don't worry about that, but mainly we're here for the advantage on the grapple checks. Finally, at level 13, we are a Monk 6. This gives us key empowered strikes, so our unarmed strikes are magical, but they already were because of the force damage from the Astral arms, so not a big deal. We get the Visage of the Astral Self here, and this has a lot of overlap with our runes. So this is mainly like a nice ribbon flavor feature. Importantly here, our unarmored movement increases to 15 feet bonus. So our base speed as a tabaxi would now be 65 feet, and our base speed as a centaur would be 75 feet. Now it's time for our next damage report at level 13, and let's see how we are doing. So since last time, we have gained extra attack and stunning strike. We've gained expertise in athletics. We've bumped our wisdom up to 18. We've got that Giant's Might, so the advantage on those athletics checks, and plus 5 feet of speed. So what do our tactics look like? Again, we're going to be pre-buffed with Longstrider, and either Dragon Form or Giant's Might, or both. Check with your DM about which one works. I'm going to assume, for the sake of my math, that it's Giant's Might that works. So we're going to have advantage on our athletics checks with a plus 14 to those checks. So it's going to be pretty hard for enemies to evade our grapple or even get away from us. But our plan hasn't changed. We're going to run in, activate our arms, and grapple our target. Now we're going to shove them prone, or actually grapple them if we missed the first grapple. And then on round 2, we're going to do our spike growth, run combo. So our total movement here, the tabaxi's up to 65 base. So I get 130 from those 2 dashes for a total of 195. Doubled and then halved, they're back at 195. And our friend the Centaur, they've got at 75 base, adding 150 from those 2 dashes. They're up to 225 and then halved from dragging. But with the way that rounding works with those 5-foot squares, that's only 112.5 feet of movement. So we're going to round down that last square. You're only actually going to be moving 110 feet. Rounding. Wonderful. But for our total movement, again, number of feet we move is the damage we deal. So the Tabaxi is going to do 195 plus that 1d4 for a total of 197. And the Centaur is going to do 110 plus that 1d4 for a total of 112.5. And again, this is the same, again, regardless of the enemy's armor class or save bonus or athletics check bonus. But again, I'm assuming the target is grappled and doesn't escape. Importantly, at this level, because we've secured that athletics expertise and that Giant's Might, the enemy is very unlikely to escape at this point. So these numbers are going to be pretty darn consistent. You are going to be the most wise athlete on the field. Now, since last time we only gained 15 points of damage in our burst round and 5 points of damage in our sustained, but these numbers we're getting close to 200 damage in our burst round, and we've been over 100 for a while in our damage per round, and this is honestly really, really, really nice. And assuming all the conditions work and the enemies aren't immune to the damage from spike growth, this is a very large amount of damage. And after the enemy is dead, you can always grab another target and drag them into it too. So it's not just going to be one and done necessarily, but it is going to be one at a time. Now, at level 14, and from here on out, we are going back to Monk. Pretty much the only way to get more damage out of this build is to get more speed, and the only way to get more speed is more Monk. At level 7 Monk, we get Evasion, which lets us, if we succeed on our dex save against a spell, we take no damage, otherwise we take half. So this is great, but great defensively. Stillness of Mind also lets us end like Charm or Frighten on ourselves as an action. Nice defensively, but these levels aren't that great. Level 15, we are Monk 8. We get another ability score increase or feat here. I'm going to bump our Wisdom to 20, and we can prepare another Druid spell because of that. So that's nice, but not world-changing here. At level 16, we are a Monk 9. We get the Unarmored Movement improvement. This lets us like run on vertical or horizontal surfaces. Like we can run across water and on walls and stuff. Nice flavor, nice utility outside of combat, but doesn't really help us. At level 17, we are a Monk 10. We get the Period of Body feature. We're immune to poison and disease. Yay, Paladins had this at level 3. Fortunately here, our unarmored movement increases to 20 feet. So that means our base speed as a Tabaxi is now 70 feet, and as a Centaur, it would be 80 feet. So finally, at level 17, our last damage report. What has changed since last time? We've gotten an extra 5 feet of speed, and our wisdom is now 20. That means that our athletics checks would be a plus 16 with advantage from the Giant Smite. That's really good, and you're pretty much almost going to be guaranteed to land those grapples, assuming that you can grapple the target. Again, our tactics haven't changed. We're going to pre-buff with Long Strider and very likely our Giant Smite, depending on how your DM interprets the rules. And again, in my opinion, Giant Smite works, Dragon Form doesn't, but again, ask. And our plan has not changed. So our Tabaxi at this level can move a total of 210 feet, and our Centaur can move a total of 110 feet while dragging their target. Again, speed is damage plus a d4. So we would be doing 212.5 damage in our burst round against either target, and 122.5 DPR with our Centaur version. And again, we are assuming the target is grappled and doesn't escape. And this is, again, a very marginal increase since last time. The only real things that are bumping our damage are our increases to base speed. Now, if you wanted to play the Tabaxi version, which is the version I recommend, your DPR is pretty much going to be 15 points lower than the Centaurs at pretty much all times. And honestly, it's going to take a long time for that extra 15 DPR to make up for the 90 damage that you just dealt. So if the combat's going to last longer than 6 turns of you dragging them around, the Centaur is going to do more damage, but otherwise the Tabaxi is going to do more damage, and I would recommend the Tabaxi version of the build overall. But with all that math done and all that running through, it's now time for our summary. What is the overall score of this build? So for this, I took the damage numbers of all our damage reports and averaged them together. And for our burst version, this is a 173.1. And for our DPR version, this is a 100.6. For the Tabaxi DPR version, it'll be right about 14 points lower than that, so it'll be like 86, 85. And both these numbers are the best numbers I have ever made on the channel, both for burst and DPR. This outdoes the Fiend Knight, although the Fiend Knight is doing more damage on average throughout their career. They are not doing more damage in this character. And this build does about 50% more DPR than my Living Anvil build from a couple weeks ago. But again, this comes with some big asterisks. Is spike growth magical damage at your table? That is a huge question to ask and should be something that you resolve. Finally, what happens if the monster escapes? What happens if the monster can't be grappled? Maybe they're too big or they can't be dragged or something like that. Then your damage pretty much doesn't work and you are down to I am a monk and I punch things, and that's not that great. So again, some big asterisks, and I made some assumptions in the calculation of the damage, namely that the target wouldn't escape. So if take these numbers with a grain of salt. Now that said, you're capable of a lot with this build, and it might be kind of annoying to roll that many d4s at your table. So again, this is a build to talk with your DM about, but mathematically, it's got some real good numbers behind it if all the assumptions are correct. Now, if I was going to take this version of the build to 20, I would probably take Monk 13 or go Monk 12 and pick up that extra level of Fighter. This would give us another couple of feats. You could take Resilient Constitution and probably bump your dex to 18. But there's not a whole lot of scaling that you'll get out of this character offensively with those last few levels. And this character is honestly at their peak at level 9, or like in kind of that level 9 to 13 range is kind of when they're at their peak. Although again, this build is really strong from level 6 as soon as it comes online. Ways you can make this build better. Magic items. So anything that you can get that improves your speed, whether it's boots of speed or if you're the centaur, the horseshoes of speed, anything you can get that makes you faster will have so mathematically the way this works, there's about a 1.5 translation in terms of how much speed you have into how much damage you output. And it's obviously higher for the Tabaxi's burst. So if you can get magic items that make you faster, you can do a lot more damage with this build. Another way to enhance this build is if your allies buff you, namely the haste spell. If someone casts the haste spell on you, you double your speed and you get an extra action that can be used to take the dash action. So this will more than double the damage output of this character and take it from really good, assuming all the asterisks are met, to insane. So yes, that is absolutely something that can happen. And if that happens in your game and you zip around like crazy, tell me about it. I want to hear about it. Just a few words on other races. You can play anything for this. Anything with a fast speed, again, works really, really well. The shifter out of Monsters of the Multiverse in particular can work well, especially if you take the form that gives you an extra 10 feet of move speed and like lets you move 10 feet as a reaction if an enemy like ends their turn next to you. So you could potentially drag your target 5 feet as a reaction for 5 points of damage. Not that much, but that is another option. And so any race with a high speed works for this. But again, the faster races work better, and the Tabaxi overall works the best. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. This build was something that kind of blew my mind with how it worked and all the damage, and I was honestly really impressed with the amount of damage our Roadrunner, Usain Bolt, who runs with everybody while grappling them and dragging them through the spikes, trimming the hedge with how much they rip them back and forth. This was just a crazy one and a fun one, and I hope you enjoyed it. So thanks for watching. Again, I am Nathan, and I will see you next time.